Review Session 9, Market Failure and Government Involvement, so subsidies and taxes. Before going through this, let's look at the definitions of private good. Private good is a good that is excludable. It's based on payment. When I mean excludable, you using it means I can't. That's exclusive. If I use the iPod, you cannot, and vice versa. A public good is usually provided by the government, and it is non-excludable. My use of it does not stop your use of it. So national defense, for example, I am safe in my society because of national defense. Me being safe nationally because of defense does not exclude you from being you from using it. So it's usually government provided. Two types of market failure in the AP test: either a positive externality or or negative externality. So what you should write, we'll go into much more detail, but an externality, write this down: outcome experienced by someone outside. Outcome experienced by someone outside of the market transaction. Another word you want to write is byproduct. This can be both positive and negative, as discussed on the next slide. But what is a free rider problem? The free rider problem is when people that don't pay for the good benefit from it. So if you get out of paying taxes but you drive on roads that are fixed by government money, you're free riding. Okay, positive externality. Again, I would write outcome experienced by someone outside of the market transaction, and then write positive byproduct. This is good. An example would be a neighborhood that benefits from a bakery being in their store. Maybe they are being in their neighborhood. Maybe they benefit because of the aroma. It's very pleasant. People like that the bakery is there, even if they're not purchasing from the bakery. Or if a marathon comes to town, they might not care anything about the marathon, but it brings business. Runners come in and check out hotels, so you benefit from that, even though you're not part of the transaction. So you want to go ahead and you want to copy down this graph. We just have the market, supply and demand, and equilibriums. So I would hit pause and copy this down. Now, how is a positive externality represented in this graph? We are going to add to this graph. Obviously, the demand in society is much greater for that bakery or that marathon than is represented in this market graph. I would write this down to the left of the graph. This graph represents the market transaction between the buyers and the sellers. The buyers and sellers at the bakery does not include the wants and needs of the neighborhood. If it did, the demand curve would actually be more to the left. Scratch that, I mean to the right. Sorry, the demand curve would actually move to the right. When you draw the real demand curve, meaning the demand curve that is most accurate, you see where the new equilibrium points are. Now, in this case, it says, what is the relationship between positive externality and price and quantity produced in the market? The red lines represent where you are currently, quantity and price currently. The blue lines represent what it should be, what society wants. So what is the relationship? Price and quantity. Price, write this down. Positive externality, price is too low. Quantity is too low. So just look, the red lines are less than the green lines. So what society really wants are the green lines. How does this relate to allocation of resources? Put your finger on the old equilibrium. That's where you're at. You should be the green equilibrium. So obviously this is, write this down, under allocation of resources. And how's the government going to fix this? Well, if they want more to be produced, because society wants more, they want to go from the red quantity to the green quantity, they need to get sellers to make it. So what they do, write this down, subsidy. Subsidy is when you pay a producer to make a good. So we'll give producers money to make the good. I would put this in the graph. The distance between the two demand curves, the one you're at operating from and the actual one that it should be, that distance in between is called the externality. Label that. In this case, that's a positive externality when demand has moved. This is just a recap. Positive externality, resources underallocated, so you give a subsidy. a negative externality. Write this down in the definition. A negative byproduct of a market transaction. Negative byproduct of a market transaction. Keep writing. Which means there is an extra social cost to the transaction. There is an extra social cost to the transaction not represented in the graph. Extra social cost not represented in the graph. Social cost means society pays a price for it. If you buy a car from Toyota, the rest of the society is affected by the pollution that car produces, even though they're not represented in this graph here. So if we were going to graph the negative externality, it would look like this. The supply curve, the original supply curve is not accurate. The cost of making that good is actually much higher. You have to consider the cost that society pays, not just the producer. So the supply curve, if the supply curve moves, it's because it's a negative externality. Label the distance in between as the negative externality, and you can tell here, if you look at the green lines, what society actually wants is less than what it's at currently. So you are over allocating your resources, and the price and the market is too low. It should actually be higher, as indicated by the graph. So relationship to market quantity and price. Market quantity is too high, should be lower. Price is too low, should be higher. Allocation of resources, this is over allocating resources. We're making too much. So bring it in, scale it back. So letter C, how does the government remedy this? They tax. Part D says, who do they direct their actions to? They're trying to push the cost, write this down, from society to the producers. Okay, moving on to taxes. Taxes are a way, write this down, to redistribute wealth. That's the goal of a tax, to redistribute wealth. First kind is progressive tax. Write the definition down. This is when the percentage, average percentage of a tax that you pay goes up as your income increases. So rate of tax goes up as income goes up. Example, write this down, income tax. So if you make $100,000, you pay 10% income tax. If you make $200,000, you pay 20% income tax. So as you make more money, the tax rate that you experience goes up. Write this down, put a big star by it. This is the biggest way the U.S. redistributes wealth, progressive taxes. Write that down. Progressive taxes are the biggest way the United States government redistributes wealth, trying to make it more equal in society. Be a regressive tax. This is when the average rate of tax goes down as you make more money. So that doesn't seem logical. And the government would never say, okay, we're going to tax the poor a greater amount of tax, and as you get richer, you pay less taxes. It's done in a much more unintended way. So the example, write this down, sales tax. Everyone pays 6% sales tax. Well, if you buy a car and the sales tax is 6%, and that's $1,000. Well, if you make $100,000, that $1,000 is a percentage of your income. But if you only make $1,000, that $1,000 sales tax is 100% of your income. So while the rich person paid 10% of their income, you paid 100%, but it was the same chunk of money as 6% sales tax. So that's sort of a sneaky regressive tax. Proportional tax, that is a tax that when the average rate of tax is the same proportion as your income. So 2% income increase, you have a 2% tax increase. So put on the margins to the left other types of taxes. Gift tax, that's aiming at taxing the rich, because if you are giving a gift to someone, you're wealthy enough to do that. Death tax, someone dies, you're redistributing that wealth. Those are both taxes that aim to take money from the rich and give to the poor.